Hare Krishna. All glories to Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namani Namaste Saraswati Deve Guruvani Pracharine Nirvisesa Sunyavadi Paskatya Desatarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktivindam Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Srimad Bhagvatam and Srimad Bhagavad Gita, Grantaraj ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Haribol. So, today, sorry I'm late. This is the busiest time of the year for me because of I'm always fighting the clock to plant everything, get it in the ground so that things grow, and I have to protect them from the slugs and from rabbits and from moths and flies and butterflies and all kinds of different things and creatures that are hungry. So I see that we had homework submitted by Sanmukh and Shesta and Ria, Arisha and Agastya. Okay. I think that's it. Okay, so there's Agastya, Arisha, Ria, Shesta, Sanmukh. Okay, so I'm going to take a look at Ria. Let's see what she did. Write the introduction for the Book of Knowledge. In other words, The Science of Knowledge is the title of the book. It is very important to bring real knowledge to our world. Our world is contaminated by nescience, meaning ignorance, and everyone has forgotten their true purpose on earth. While the human being is in the mother's womb, he or she promises to the Lord that he will dedicate his life to the Lord's service. His service. His should be capitalized. Not all the hises, but when you're referring to Krishna, a pronoun referring to Krishna should always be capitalized. However, the second he is born, now the he here is the living entity or the jiva, he forgets his promise and gets addicted to material life. False knowledge is being spread all over the world and being taught in the school. So now you change your thought a little bit, so that should be a paragraph. Beginning with false knowledge should be a different paragraph. False knowledge is being spread all over the world and being taught in the schools as truth. Material knowledge should not be neglected, though, in order to live and sustain your family. Okay. You must earn money, and you can dovetail the usage of money to unsinful and useful purposes. Good. Unfortunately, people are using money for sinful and ignorant purposes. Everyone has completely neglected true knowledge, which is most important for society. Therefore, it is very important to know the knowledge which the material knowledge of which, it should be of which, the material knowledge is an insignificant servant of. Okay, that's got to be corrected, that sentence. Therefore, it's very important to receive, let's say, I would say, genuine knowledge in order to have a successful life. And material knowledge should only be used, and material knowledge should be used in the service of spiritual purpose of life, something like that. Okay. To attain this knowledge, you must have strong faith in the Lord. Always say Lord Krishna, so that no one, because they might think it's somebody else, and always be engaged in thoughts of Him. Again, a pronoun, so it should be capitalized. If you do this, you will be dear. You will be dear to the Lord. Slowly, the Lord will reveal His knowledge. All of this true knowledge will make no sense to a person who has not taken the Lord's lotus feet as their only shelter. Good. One should follow the instructions of previous acharyas, including Srila Prabhupada. These acharyas have been sent by the Lord Himself, and they know the most purest and auspicious knowledge, which is the purest and auspicious knowledge, which is, well, you say bolder, but that's not the right word. It's superior compared to material knowledge, which is smaller than an atom. Okay. Oh, I see what your point is. So you should, and they should know the purest and auspicious knowledge, which is like a mountain, compared to material knowledge, which is smaller than an atom. Okay? So you'd have to correct that. By knowing the knowledge, you will understand your true relation with the Lord. This knowledge is what all gods are trying to attain, and simply by taking shelter of the Lord's feet and receiving His mercy, His again should be capitalized, you will attain this knowledge and reach the Lord's lotus feet, continuing to serve Him eternally. Okay. When you say the knowledge is what all gods are trying to attain, I would say all living entities, all people. And when you say gods, you're confusing everything. So just say people. Okay. Okay, next. Explain how the phrase Prabhupada writes. Explain the following phrase that Prabhupada writes. One can understand the Supreme Nature by thorough study of oneself. And explain if this is different than man is the measure of all things. When Srila Prabhupada wrote, one can understand the nature of the Supreme through study of oneself, it means that by realizing who you truly are and your purpose completely, you will be able to understand the nature of the Lord. To understand the ocean, you first need to understand the drop of water from it. Good. Similarly, first we need to understand ourselves, and then we start understanding the Lord. Man is the measure of all things means that a human being is the ultimate source of value rather than God. Okay. This phrase is the opposite truth. Man is not the source of value. God is. Man is a servant of God. Human beings cannot go against the laws of nature, and here it is saying that man is the measure of all things, not God. However, this is completely wrong. One can never become God, nor can they obtain a sense of proprietorship such as the Lord's. Jai. O glory to Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Okay. One can never become God, nor can they obtain a sense of proprietorship such as the Lord's. Not. Nor can they. No, I would say. Okay. I would say. Nor can they emulate. That means become equal to or be like Krishna. Emulate the Lord in any respect. We are qualitatively the same as the Lord, but not quantitatively. Very good. Just as a drop of water from the ocean has the same properties and qualities as the ocean, but the ocean has more quantity. In the same way, we have the same qualities as the Lord, but the Lord possesses more quantity than us. Well, we don't have all the same qualities of the Lord. We have up to 78% of his qualities. He has obviously things that we don't have. We are the servants of Lord Krishna. That is who we are, and we can only understand the Lord after accepting this. We are not the proprietor, nor the controller, nor the source of value and everything else. We are just the servants of the Lord. Okay, very good. Very good, Ria. Thank you. Okay, let's take a look at, that was Ria, Arisha Gupta. Okay. Look up the references to knowledge given in the general index of Bhagavad Gita. Yes, that was one of our homeworks. Take notes on some important findings. Using these notes and what we have studied up to now, attempt to write the introduction. The introduction must have the following points. Explain why it's necessary to explain knowledge. I guess you mean explain what knowledge is. Explain how to attain the knowledge. Okay. Knowledge. Okay, this is Arisha. Knowledge, according to the dictionary, is facts, information, skills acquired by a person through experience or education. The theoretical or practical understanding of a subject. According to this definition, anyone can gain knowledge just by an experience or having an education. All of this material knowledge is phenomenal knowledge. The Vedic standpoint of knowledge, according to Bhagavad Gita 13.3, is obtained when we understand this body and its knower. Krishna had said that he is the knower of all bodies. He is Paramatma, or Supersoul, and resides in everyone's bodies. Everyone's body. Therefore, he knows what is happening in everyone's bodies. No, I would say everyone's body, because everyone is plural, so you don't have to say bodies. By understanding the body, which is the field of activities, and by understanding the Supreme Personality Godhead, or Krishna, we obtain absolute knowledge. Anything that is not knowledge, according to Krishna, is ignorance. In the scriptures, anything that is not knowledge, according to Krishna, is ignorance or the absence of knowledge. The knowledge in the scriptures never changes compared to scientific knowledge, which comes up with theories and it always changes. So if you write it your way, and it always changes. By explaining what absolute knowledge is, people will not focus on the aspects of life that don't provide real knowledge. Okay? In Bhagavad Gita 5.16, Prabhupada states, he can know everything well if he cares to take shelter of the perfect, bona fide, Krishna-conscious spiritual master. One can know God and one's relationship with God only when one actually meets a representative of God. Very good. This means that one can gain knowledge about the knower of the body by meeting a representative of Krishna or a bona fide spiritual master. By approaching a spiritual master, you render service unto him, you will gain knowledge because you would have to stick, because see, spiritual master is singular. And then you say render service to him. So you should be in the singular mode then. You will gain knowledge because the spiritual master has obtained absolute knowledge. One must be in the mode of goodness when one is obtaining real knowledge. Okay, you could say one must be promoted, one must advance to the mode of goodness in order to obtain real knowledge. In Bhagavad Gita 4.39, Krishna states, "A faithful man who is dedicated to transcendental knowledge and who subdues his senses is eligible to achieve such knowledge, and having achieved it, he quickly attains the supreme spiritual peace." This translation means a person who is faithful to Krishna and who is faithful to Krishna and can control their senses can attain perfect knowledge without delay. In Bhagavad Gita 1687 it is written that a person who is not austere, devoted, engaged, or in devotional service, or is envious of Krishna cannot obtain absolute knowledge. Okay? To receive knowledge of the Absolute, one must have perfected their spiritual life and accepted Krishna as their supreme personality of Godhead. You must render service to a bona fide spiritual master and be able to control your senses. One who does not do these things will not receive the numinous knowledge, but will receive only phenomenal knowledge gained by experiences and education. Very good point. In this world, there is nothing as pure as transcendental knowledge. Ignorance is the cause of repeated birth and death in the material world, and transcendental knowledge is the cause of our liberation. One who practices devotional service will enjoy this knowledge and create peace within themselves. Oh, very good, Orisa. Okay, very nice. Thank you. Okay, let's see what Shrestha has written. Here's my homework for tomorrow. Okay. For the second question, I had a doubt on what Prabhupada actually means by thoroughly studying oneself. Okay, we'll go over that. Assignment. Attempt to write the introduction for the book. How is Prabhupada's statement in the purport of Bhagavad Gita 2.16? One can understand the nature of the Supreme by thorough study of oneself. How is that different from Protagoras' saying, "Man is the measure of all things"? Okay, let's see what you answer. Introduction. There are a plethora means many. There are a plethora of books. In other words, there are many books around the world which try to propound, meaning explain, their respective concepts of knowledge. But none have succeeded in giving an overarching, complete description of knowledge. Yeah, overarching means, looking down on something from a high point. The meaning of life, reality, existence, knowledge, perception, these are all extremely important concepts that are vital to understand modern philosophers, to understand. New sentence. Modern philosophers have tried to fill this gap of knowledge through their concepts of philosophy, but they are all but complete. So in other words, now you would say that they are incomplete. Although it's understandable, all but complete, but sometimes that can be misunderstood. Rather to say directly, they are all incomplete, or they're all lacking the essence of knowledge, something like that. Okay. This book explains the concept of real knowledge in philosophy as explained and asserted by the Vedic Acharyas who quote from Vedic scriptures, which are the oldest and the purest sources of knowledge. Okay. Before we delve into the authenticity of the Vedas, it is important to understand how people of this world are imperfect by design, and therefore the knowledge propounded by humans in this world is also imperfect, right? The knowledge within this world has many defects because people within this world are conditioned. This means that they are prone to the four defects which comprise all living entities. No, I would say four defects of every living entity. Comprise, I don't think that's the right word to use there in that context. You're trying to say that these four defects are part of every living entity, but it's better to say four defects that all living entities have, something like that. The knowledge within this world has many defects because people within this world are conditioned. This means that they are prone to the four defects which which all living entities have. These are to commit mistakes, to be illusion, to have a cheating propensity, and to have imperfect senses. Okay. Having imperfect senses. This is like a little subtitle. Everybody has imperfect senses. We all do not have perfect eyes, perfect ears, etc. What we see and perceive is very limited. Scientists themselves have noted that as humans, we can only perceive visible light, which is only a very minimal portion of light of the wave spectrum. Overall, this proves that it is impossible to obtain, not pertain, but obtain knowledge through the senses. Okay, next subtitle, being illusioned. To be illusion means to accept something which is not true. Sometimes we blindly accept things or mistake something to be something else. The example of a snake and rope is much, I would say, are much used in this context. One might spot a rope far away and think that it is a snake and begin to fear for their safety. However, upon coming closer, we realize that this is not that this snake is actually a rope. This is the effect of being illusioned. Okay. Next subtitle, making mistakes. Everybody in this world makes mistakes. Let's face it. Whether you're a high school dropout or Albert Einstein, you have made mistakes. Sir James Dyson, the man who created the famous bagless vacuum cleaner, failed approximately 5,000 times before he came up with a working vacuum cleaner. No matter how smart, you will fail and make mistakes at times. These qualities are innate. There is a famous saying, to err is human. Okay. Next subtitle, having a cheating propensity. Each person has a unique ideology that they have developed through their upbringings. You don't have to say plural, through their upbringing and experiences. Naturally, they believe that they have the best ideas or have the correct understanding. Most people who try to write books almost always have personal beliefs and ideologies which they try to advocate. As a result of this, people use selective evidence to only use supporting evidence in their, As a result of this, people use selective evidence to only, as a result of this, people use selective evidence people use selective evidence in their writings. Due to the use of selective evidence, people are cheating their audiences. Okay, you have to say people use selective evidence that supports their thesis and rejects or do not mention evidence that is contrary to their thesis. The four defects above portray that scientists and philosophers are not able to create an all-encompassing not able to create an all-encompassing theory of knowledge. Very good. Philosophers disagree about the meaning of life, and material scientists are constantly disagreeing on the mechanisms of this universe. For example, until recently it is widely accepted that Newton's law of gravity applied to all aspects in this universe. However, the discovery of the quantum realm has upended Newton's universal laws. This example proves that the materialistic approach of knowledge is incomplete, defective, illusory, and most importantly, is constantly changing. What might be true in the textbooks now could be changed and proven wrong after more study and research. Very good point. After contemplating and arguing for many years, they came up with the definition, the tripartite. They, who's they? I guess you can say scholars, lexicographers, that's people who make up dictionaries. Okay. Anyway, they came up with the definition, the tripartite theory of knowledge, that knowledge is a justified true belief. However, this itself is not verified. Some philosophers called skeptics believe that knowledge can never be attained. They have yet again fallen into the inevitable loophole of disagreement. No, the inevitable, not loophole, but it would be called inevitable morass, M-O-R-A-S-S, of disagreement. The morass is like a deep pit. You fall in there and it's dark and you get all entangled. They have yet again fallen into the inevitable morass of disagreement and misunderstanding that is an effect of being subject to the four defects. Very good. You can use the word morass, or you can use the word anyway, we can look up synonyms of morass to find the right word. We should get this straight. Although it may appear as if the modern world is in control and at the peak, there are many things that we are ignorant about. There are many things that we are ignorant about. That's not a good way of writing English. You'd say there's still many things that we don't understand. For example, in medical science, only 15% of all known diseases have a cure. 45% of diseases are chronic diseases which are being medically facilitated. And the rest of the 40% do not even have a cure. Are being medically facilitated. Are being managed. Okay, anyway, you can choose a better word than facilitated. Facilitated means you're helping it along. Managed means you're keeping control of it. Due to the modern lifestyle, we get more diseases and we have no control over the situations. For example, the U.S. medical U.S. medical profession, I would say, experienced their worst during this coronavirus pandemic because they were absolutely unprepared for such a disease, such a virus, not conditions, such a virus. The coronavirus pandemic has caused a terrible mental health issue for many of those who are unable to cope with grief and feelings of disconnect. The fact that we are unable to solve such a problem and adapt to the situation shows how we are not having the correct knowledge. So after discussing all these issues, you must be wondering, how can I actually understand knowledge? The process of understanding knowledge comes after understanding what is knowledge. From what has been discussed, we can deduct that that knowledge must be 1. Free from all the 4 defects. 2. Coming from a source that is perfect. 3. Eternal. 4. Always true. Oh, very good. Very good. This knowledge is perfectly explained in the Vedas. You could say we can find this knowledge in the Vedas, or we can find this perfect knowledge in the Vedas, the purest form of spiritual and material knowledge. The Vedas explain knowledge as a science rather than a theory. They have a clear definition of what knowledge is. They explain the different levels of knowledge and also the process to attain knowledge. No other source has given such a clear-cut definition that saves one from the pain of having to figure it out themselves. The Vedas are a compilation of the Vedas are a compilation of the knowledge by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Earlier we have described how perfect knowledge needs to come from a perfect source, who is a more perfect source than God. The Vedas are therefore authentic and are worth studying. In Bhagavad Gita 7.2, the Lord elucidates the all-encompassing definition of knowledge as to Arjuna, his dear devotee, by saying, I shall now declare unto you in full this knowledge, both phenomenal and numinous. This being known, nothing further shall remain for you to know. Here the Lord is clearly sharing the nature of knowledge. There is material phenomenal knowledge, there is spiritual numinous knowledge, there is the Lord who is the source of all such knowledge. Very good. In the following chapter of this book, one will be able to understand the nature of knowledge in greater depth. Okay, so now a second part of the introduction, I think that's what it is. So we had 1, and now we're on point 2. 1 was the introduction, and then we're going to read from Bhagavad Gita 2.16 verses Protagoras. The verse, Bhagavad Gita 2.6, is Krishna explaining to Arjuna the difference between matter and spirit. The translation says, those who are seers of the truth have concluded that of the non-existent, the material body, there is no endurance, and of the eternal, the soul, there is no change. This they have concluded by studying the nature of both. The difference between matter and spirit is simple. The soul is eternal, and the body and the rest of the material nature are all temporary. The Lord says that understanding this difference is the beginning instruction given to those who are completely dictated by ignorance to help them gain realization. Okay. The next steps for completely removing ignorance include 2 realizations: reestablishing our eternal relationship with the Lord and understanding the difference between the Lord and the living entity. Our relationship with the Lord is that relationship which is in the form of the worshiper and the worshipable. We can cultivate this relationship with the Lord through performing devotional service under the guidance of the bona fide spiritual master. Srila Prabhupada explains that the second step for completely annihilating ignorance is to understand the difference between the living entity and God. Prabhupada then writes in the purport to Bhagavad Gita 2.16 that one can understand the nature of the Supreme by thorough study of oneself. The difference between oneself and the Supreme being understood as the relationship between the part and the whole. Very good. One must carefully study this sentence as it has a very deep meaning. When Prabhupada says study of oneself, he does not mean study of our body. Rather, he means the study of the soul, the jiva. By studying the soul, one can come to realize that the objective of the study of oneself is actually realizing that we are the servant and the Lord is the worshipable. Srila Prabhupada states in the purport, although there is no difference between the energy and the energetic is accepted as the supreme, and the energy or nature is accepted as the subordinate. The living entities, therefore, are always subordinate to the Supreme Lord, as in the case of the master and the servant, or the teacher and the taught. Krishna is accepted as the Supreme Personality of Godhead because while we are the energies of the Lord, He is forever the maintainer of us and the rest of the creation. Srila Prabhupada's statement that one can understand the nature of the Supreme by thorough study of oneself is different from Protagoras' saying man is the measure of all things. Below is a chart explaining the differences between Protagoras' saying and the message of Bhagavad Gita 2.16 as explained by Prabhupada. Okay, very good. Bhagavad Gita 2.16. One can understand the nature of the Supreme by thorough study of oneself. Protagoras. Man is the measure of all things. Protagoras uses the word man instead of self. This implies that Protagoras believes that people should identify with the body. The goal of this process is sense gratification. Protagoras is essentially saying, believe whatever you want to believe, and it is correct. Okay, good. Okay, point 2. This process, meaning understanding God by thorough study of oneself, is thoroughly study the self, meaning the soul. The goal of this process is to understand God through a cultivation of devotional service and spiritual study. It involves a predefined understanding that the body is temporary and the soul is eternal. And Shrestha stops there. Very good. Okay. Thank you, Shrestha. What I'm going to do is I'm going to print these out. I'm going to correct them, and I don't know if I'll have time to give it to you tomorrow. I'll try. And then we'll have I'll have a discussion how to. Okay, by studying your introductions, I'm going to give a outline of step-to-step points that one should make in the introduction to help you structure your introduction. Okay, Sanmukh. Did we say, okay, Ria, Arisha, oh, Augustia's there too. Okay, let me read Sanmukh. Wow, that's a long one, Sanmukh. Very good. You spent a lot of time. Okay, let's go over this. Introduction to the Science of Knowledge. In this world, there are many books for knowledge, and now you may think, another book on the theory of knowledge. But this book is no theory. It is the science of knowledge. You might think that you know the definition of knowledge, but even great Western philosophers couldn't come to a consensus on the definition of knowledge. You can say great Western philosophers have still not come to a consensus on the definition of knowledge. We're going right to the present. They still don't have a clear-cut. I mean, they have some definition, but it's not clear-cut, and they disagree. The definition of knowledge, according to Plato, is justified true belief. Later, another philosopher, Edmond Gettier, came along and challenged this definition. As time passed by, many philosophers supported Gettier, while others stuck to Plato's definition. Later, those who believed Gettier made up their definitions, causing controversy between each one of them. Each religion and even their sects have their own sets of beliefs and ideas. Then how can we expect that these people have a true definition of knowledge? Very good. So why the so-called great philosophers are unable to arrive at a perfect definition of knowledge? The reason is any human being, it's the next paragraph, any human being is subject to 4 defects. He is sure to commit mistakes. However learned he may be, however advanced he may be, he must commit mistakes. Hence, we have a saying which goes by, to err is human. And one is subjected to be illusioned. Illusion means to accept something which is not. In darkness, one can confuse a rope for a snake, not to a snake. There is cheating propensity of every man. Even a child wants to cheat. The mother asks, "Oh, what is?" I'm sorry. And what? In darkness, one can confuse a rope for a snake, not to a snake. There is cheating propensity of every man. Even a child wants to cheat. The mother asks, "Oh, what is in your hand?" The child says, "No, mother, nothing," although the mother can see that he has got something. So the cheating propensity is there, and above all, our senses are imperfect. We are proud of our eyes. We want to see what you can see. If the light is off, there is no power to see. If there is no sun, what can one see? Therefore, one sees under certain conditions only. Therefore, senses are imperfect. So one cannot get perfect knowledge by imperfect senses, by speculative knowledge. Bertrand Russell, a well-known British philosopher, logician, mathematician, historian, writer, essayist, said that theory of knowledge is a subject which is partly logical and partly psychological, and hence knowledge is a product of doubt. So it is implied from the above that there is no proper definition to explain what knowledge is. Now the question you might have is, if you reject all of those ideas, then what is the actual definition of knowledge? Real knowledge is to know what matter is, what spirit is, and the controller of both. Material knowledge is known as Jada Vidya, or the knowledge of the inert matter. When everything stops, in other words, knowledge of inert matter means something dies, that's it, it's finished. So is the knowledge. Material knowledge is known as Jada Vidya, or the knowledge of the inert matter, while spiritual knowledge is known as Para Vidya, or the knowledge of transcendence. Knowledge of the spirit soul is considered transcendental because it can free us from our material bondage and take us to an eternal position with the Lord, which is the highest position that can be achieved by a human being. Very good. This transcendental knowledge was explained by none other than Lord Krishna directly to Arjuna during the battlefield, on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, before the battle started. All this is contained in the Bhagavad Gita. This knowledge leads a person to be in Krishna consciousness. This spiritual knowledge is defect-free because it was taught by Krishna, who is Achyuta, infallible, who is the direct authority. One must take God's word as it is, that is, Jyoti. This can be compared to the sunlight. Sunlight is light. We have to take it as it is. If we want to know where this light is coming, from where this light is coming, what is there in the sun that is beyond you? Well, okay, you got this sentence all messed up, but if we want to know where this light is coming from, it is where this light is coming from. Obviously, it is the sun, but the sun is beyond our ability to explore directly because of its intense heat. Therefore, you can't go there. That's the idea. So whatever understanding you have of the sun, it's going to be incomplete. So you're saying that the sun is beyond your jurisdiction, our human, beyond the jurisdiction of human beings. But light is there. We need to take this. This is the essence. This material world is tama, darkness, because in the material world there is no Krishna consciousness. It is almost absent. And Jyoti means there is Krishna consciousness. Jyoti means light. We, the living entities called Jiva, should be are, between Tama and Jyoti, between ignorance and knowledge, or between darkness and light. Therefore they are called Tatastha, marginal. Therefore we are called, or therefore human beings are called Tatastha. marginal. Sometimes one may be in the darkness, and sometimes one may be in Jyoti, or the light. So those who are accepting Krishna's words, they are in Jyoti, and those who are interpreting Krishna, they are in darkness. Unless one has accepted Krishna as he is, our natural position is to hear about Krishna, to act for Krishna, to think of Krishna. Then everything will be perfect. That is Krishna consciousness. Generally, a human being is interested in religion, economic development, sense gratification, and liberation. But love of God is above all these. Very good point. Our desire to be the proprietor, and if we want to be free of this, our desire is to be the proprietor, and if we want to be free of this, one must accept Krishna as the proprietor of everything. Very good point. Instead, we go to the university spending much of our time and money in the hope of acquiring knowledge and learn how to satisfy our senses and become the proprietor. Ordinary knowledge obtained by a university education pertains only to matter, which is not real knowledge. Knowledge means knowing the distinction between matter and spirit and matter. In modern education, there is no knowledge about spirit. It is simply taking care of the material elements and bodily needs. Therefore, academic knowledge is not complete. This will only cause us to be more entangled by pains and suffering unless it is dovetailed to Krishna consciousness. When anything material is dovetailed to Krishna, it has a reality, and it is sat, or eternal. But when it is not dovetailed to Krishna, it has no reality and is meant for satisfaction of the senses. Good point. Let's go further and conclude why this knowledge is perfect. Let's first start with the process of acquiring knowledge. There are two methods of acquiring knowledge. The first method is avaroha panta, or the deductive process. Getting knowledge from higher authorities. So the Vedic understanding is to receive knowledge from the authorities. That is the perfect knowledge. The deductive knowledge coming directly from the Supreme Source. The Vedic knowledge is received perfectly by disciplic succession from authorities. Such knowledge is never dogmatic, as ill-conceived by less intelligent persons. Very good. The other method is arohapanta, or the inductive process, where one does research to attain knowledge. The knowledge which is being sought after by using our imperfect senses, that is the arohapanta, by ascending process. We can never come to the real knowledge. That is not possible because our senses are imperfect, because we are imperfect in every respect. So we have to receive knowledge from the planet. From the perfect. We have to receive knowledge from the perfect person. It should be perfect person, not just perfect. Prabhupada in the purport to Srimad Bhagvatam 1.9.18 states, the authorities speak and the people in general believe them. But in the case of Vedic truths, they have been taught not to believe. Even if they accept them, they give a different interpretation. Each and every man wants a direct perception of Vedic knowledge, but foolishly they deny it. This means that the misguided man can believe one authority, the scientist, but will reject the authority of the Vedas. From the above point, we can conclude that the Vedic knowledge must be taught, while the scientists just tell some news, and we believe them as if they are absolute authorities. You should write that, not the best. Now let's look at the sources of knowledge. Pramana is evidence or proof. The term refers to sources of knowledge that are held to be valid. The three pramanas can be broadly classified in the following three categories: pratyaksha pramana, anumana pramana, sabda pramana. Direct sense perception, pratyaksha. Anumana pramana, theories based on evidence. And sabda pramana, hearing from a bona fide authority. Pratyaksha pramana refers to the process of acquiring knowledge by direct perception. Certainly it can be taken as a means of observing the truth, but unfortunately sometimes such perception is also subjected to defects and thus mistakes, as our senses are imperfect. Therefore, pratyaksha pramana alone is not a very good source of finding the truth. Anumana means you see one event and you see another, and because of your previous experiences of the world, you infer. Okay, something like that. This must have happened in between, therefore this has happened. Okay. So this is called inference. In fact, in the inference also, the fire on the hill is inferred by its smoke. But the relationship between the fire and smoke is perceived with the naked eyes only. A practical example of Anumana Pramana or wild speculation is Darwin's theory that proposes the idea that human beings must have evolved from apes. Darwin tried to find out how life came into this universe, and with all his researches, when he couldn't make out, in other words, when he couldn't determine with absolute certainty, he admitted that he resorted to wild imaginative speculation. Thus he himself says in the introduction to his book, The Origin of Species. Okay. Yeah, you should find the exact words and put quotation marks on them. That would be stronger, making the point stronger. Sabda Pramana refers to the process of acquiring knowledge by hearing from a bona fide authority. Out of the three kinds of evidences, the Sabda Pramana, or the evidences received from Vedas, are accepted. Knowledge is received by hearing. It is not experimental. We cannot understand that which is beyond our sense perception by experiment. So, scientists reject absolute knowledge, and they only rely on knowledge that they can get through their senses, for the most part. So, so when you say knowledge is received by hearing, it is not experimental. No, you're referring to spiritual knowledge here, so I would like make that clear that we're not saying all knowledge. Well, in a sense, all knowledge is received by hearing. It is not, but when you say it is not experimental, people will challenge you there because so many people are doing experiments and they're arriving at some conclusions that they can verify to a certain extent. So you don't want to make a sweeping, all-inclusive statement that can be challenged easily by outside people. So you can say, knowledge is received by hearing. It is not experimental. No, some knowledge is experimental. Spiritual knowledge is received by hearing. We cannot understand that which is beyond our sense perception by experiment. Okay, that's true. We cannot understand who our Father is by experimental knowledge. One cannot say, let me find out who my Father is by experiment. Our Father had existed even before we existed, and it would not be possible to understand by experimental knowledge that this or that man is my father. The real authority is the mother. Therefore, Vedic knowledge has been likened to the mother. Therefore, our Vedic injunctions are very supreme evidence. For example, in India, cow dung is accepted as very pure, so in one place the Vedic injunction of the Vedic injunctions, you will find that any stool of animal is impure. That's a fact. Everyone knows. But in another place it is said exception is given to the cow's stool or cow dung. That is pure. It is so pure that if you apply on some impure place, any stool of the animal is impure. That is a fact. Everyone knows. But in another place it is said, exception is given to the cow's stool, cow dung. That is pure. It is so pure that if you apply on some impure place, it becomes pure. That's a fact. In India still, especially in villages, they mop the floor with cow dung, and it is so nice and so fresh. Now, modern science also accepts that cow dung is pure, that is, therapeutic and antiseptic. Hence, from the above, it is implied that avaroha panta, or deductive knowledge, is the perfect process of acquiring knowledge, and Sabda Pramana is the perfect source of acquiring knowledge. Okay, let me see how long this is. This is a pretty long purport. Oh, no. Okay. Hence, from the above, it is implied that Avarohapanta, okay, as the Shruti comes from the most perfect person, Krishna, it just needs to be taken blindly. No, that's not a good, I would not say that. Taken blindly, everyone will disagree with that. No, as the Shruti comes from the most perfect person, you'd have to explain what Shruti is. It just, one can accept it as knowledge derived from a perfect authority. This Shruti Pramana must be heard from a devotee in the disciplic succession directly from the Lord. If one hears from a person in disciplic succession, then that guru only passes down the message said by the Lord. While instead, when one hears from a so-called guru, then whatever he hears is either false or incomplete. And when one hears from a person like this, then it will take him many lifetimes to go back to Godhead. Okay. Now, the Krishna consciousness helps us in the material world. It helps us become free from the cycle of birth and death, and in overcoming the threefold miseries, which are Adhyatmika, Adhidaivika, Adhibhautika. Okay. Due to these threefold miseries, the living entity is full of anxiety, fearing when one measure may arise, fearing what may happen in the future. These miseries, or at least one of these, always disturb a living entity, and Krishna consciousness is the only way to escape from this dilemma. So now you might be thinking, does it pertain to any religion, Hinduism, Christianity, Islam? The answer is no. It is faith. All right, so I know what you're trying to say, but this is not, it's not clear here. Religion means dharma, the characteristic, just like if one is eating something salty or something sweet. So the characteristic of sugar is sweet and that of salt is salty. So we need to find out what our religion is, our real characteristic. In the material world, religion is linked to sentiment. But religion without religion without philosophy is sentiment, and philosophy without religion is mental speculation. These two things must be combined religiously, combined philosophy and sentiment. Then it is religion. Religious, I'm not sure about that phrase. Religious traditions are meant to awaken us to the one true religion, service to God. Srimad Bhagvatam says that the best religion brings us to pure, uninterrupted, unmotivated, loving service to God. Very good. It doesn't say that the best religion is Hinduism, a word absent from the Vedic scriptures. The religion promoted by the Vedas is called Sanatana Dharma, the eternal occupation of the soul. Good. So the next question is, where is the knowledge available? One is through the disciplic succession, along with the books of Srila Prabhupada, the founder Acharya of Krishna consciousness. Srila Prabhupada's books contribute to the world's philosophical and theological body of knowledge. They enrich the literary heritage of the planet. They provide academics with a reference point to understand the true nature of the Vedic way. They bring personal fulfillment and satisfaction. They will help us. They will convince us that the ultimate knowledge dwells within the hearts and minds of the great sages. They act as an instruction manual by which one can learn, let's see. Okay. Srila Prabhupada's books contribute to the world's philosophical and theological body of knowledge. They enrich the literary heritage of the planet. They provide academics with a reference point to understand the true nature of the Vedic way. They bring personal fulfillment and satisfaction. They help convince us that ultimate knowledge dwells within the hearts and minds of the great sages. They act as an instruction manual by which one can live successfully in the material world. They present solutions to temporary problems. They fulfill the desire of spiritual predecessors to spread the message of love of God. They provide an alternative to materialism. They clearly explain the nature of the material existence. They answer the most probing philosophical questions such as who am I, who is God, what is time, nature, and destiny, and where am I going? Okay, good. End of the introduction of Sanmukh. Okay, and then he answers the second part, which is Bhagavad Gita 2.16. In Bhagavad Gita 2.16, Prabhupada writes, one can understand the supreme nature by thorough study of oneself, explain how that is different from man is the measure of all things. Okay, well, I mean, we've heard that already. So, very good, Sanmukh. Very, very good. You've spent a lot of time and thought. And this is what's necessary. So I'm going to move on now. I guess I'll read yours tomorrow. I wanted to bring up one point today, and then give you some homework. There's a famous verse that you probably don't know, but you can look it up on Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Lila, 8th chapter, 274th verse. Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Lila, 8th chapter, 274th verse. CC Madhya 8.274. And it says, Stavara Jangama Deke Na Deke Taramurti Sarvatra Hayanija Ista Deva Spurti. The Mahabhagavata, the advanced devotee, certainly sees everything mobile and immobile, but he does not exactly see their forms. Rather, everywhere he immediately sees manifest the form of the Supreme Lord. This is a discussion that Lord Chaitanya was having with Ramananda Rai. Now, this is a very important verse because it explains the vision of a transcendental devotee or advanced devotee. Now, he sees everything, mobile and immobile. That means everything moves, everything that doesn't move. That's everything. But he does not exactly see their forms. What is he talking about? The bodies. The body of a thing. Rather, everywhere he immediately sees manifest the form of the Supreme Lord. Now, this is a big verse, a great verse. It's very profound. Now, I want you to think about this verse and try and substantiate or try and figure out in your mind if you believe this or not. That is what? That if you advance in spiritual life and become an advanced devotee, then everything you see, you will not see the form of the thing, but you'll see Krishna. Now try and explain what that means. Now, for example, I'll give you a hint. In the 7th chapter, in the 10th chapter, and in the 11th chapter, Krishna explains how to see him in nature, in the material nature. Because we're not seeing the spiritual nature, we're only seeing this material nature. Well, Krishna teaches us how to see him in this material nature. People say, well, I don't see God, so, how can I believe in God? But Krishna is teaching 7th chapter, 10th chapter, 11th chapter, how to see him in the material world, in the material nature, in material things. So now, I want you to think about that and then take a look in the 7th chapter, 10th chapter, 11th chapter, and see if you can understand what Krishna is saying. He's teaching us how to see him in the material world, in the material energy. So this is a very interesting verse, Very interesting point. And it's going to be part of this Science of Knowledge book that we're writing. So thank you. Now you have your homework for tomorrow. Are there any questions? You can ask me the questions now by writing in or texting Daniel. Anything?
Modern scientists also talk about GIPW, hierarchy pyramids. From data we get information. From information we get knowledge, and by knowledge comes wisdom. So do we include difference between knowledge, jnana, and wisdom, vijnana?
Okay, read that again slowly.
GIPW is data, information, knowledge, and wisdom. So modern scientists talk about knowledge, data, information, knowledge, and wisdom. Should we include jnana and vijnana
Should we include in this introduction
in this?
or in this book?
Didn't talk say specifically, but I would assume in the book.
Okay, it's data, then?
Data, information. So you get raw information, raw data, and then you do something to process the information. From that you gain knowledge, and then through the knowledge you get wisdom. So we include the difference between knowledge and wisdom.
Okay, can he or she give an example? It says data, information, then?
Data, information, knowledge, and wisdom.
Okay, can he or she, whoever it is, give an example?
And they respond.
All right, anyway, I'll speak to this. Yeah, data, information. In other words, this is the inductive process. You do experiments and you get data. And you get, let's say you get different opinions about that data. You try and see models or repeating in the data, or tendencies that may be predictable to a certain extent in the data that you've collected. And then you say, well, from the data, from the information, from the tendencies and models that are coming out of the data, we can assume that such and such is true in a certain context, right? Like, for example, every time you show food to an animal, it will inspect it to see if it's the type of food they want. And if it is, they'll immediately try and eat it, right? So that's through observation, right? And experimentation. I mean, there's some food, they'll smell it and look at it, and if they want it, they'll eat it. If they don't want it, they'll just ignore it. But if they want it, they'll really be enthusiastic to grab it and eat it. They sort of lose control of themselves. You know? So, is that knowledge? Well, you could say, in a sense, yes. So if you want to catch an animal, based on your experimentation, you want to catch an animal. That means as soon as they see the food that they like, they lose control of themselves. They go for it, right? So then you can catch animals like that. You see, so that's one thing. That's a type of knowledge, right? And then wisdom. Well, what is the wisdom? Well, one wisdom would be that the animals that like to eat human beings, you would do everything possible to avoid those guys, right? Because they lose control when they see the food that they like, right? And so you wouldn't go, you wouldn't go in areas where there are man-eating animals, right, or flesh-eating animals that are dangerous, unless you have a gun and a whole bunch of other people with you. But even then, why would you go there when there's dangerous animals, right? So that would be the wisdom you'd get. But all of that does not really end up as being what you would call, say, the science of knowledge, because it's all at the most it's how to preserve your body from injury. It's not how to liberate your soul from the body and go back to Godhead. You see? So data, information, knowledge, wisdom, as long as it's based on the body and what you would call self-preservation, which is the ultimate goal of people who have bodies, it's not related to it's not really essential for going back to Godhead. So therefore you would consider that mundane, temporary knowledge. It's not asat, it's not sat. Okay?
Like, as an example of a wrong version of knowledge, everything I do goes away. So is that like a form of knowledge that is more leaning towards the transcendental? Because I don't. He gave me an example of the data and knowledge stuff, but I'm hard to understanding what he's asking about the knowledge.
Well, wisdom is seeing the difference between matter and spirit and working for the goal of spirit. Yeah. Now you can dovetail material knowledge in your quest for becoming free from the entanglement of birth and death. But if you just have material knowledge, it's a temporary thing. Yeah, now you know you don't go anywhere where they're man-eating animals, right? Okay, fine, but that didn't liberate you from the cycle of birth and death. It just helps you. It's based on self-preservation. It's not based on self-liberation. So material knowledge, temporary knowledge, is based on self-preservation. Spiritual knowledge is based on self-liberation. Let's summarize it like that. Now, let's say I learn that being a vegetarian is better than being a meat eater. That's self-preservation. It's not going to make you go back to Godhead, but it might improve a little bit your stay in this body, in the material world. So the criterion, the base criterion, is self-preservation as opposed to and compared to self-liberation, or asat and sat. Okay. Okay. No questions, no answers. All material knowledge is based on self-preservation.